Peace be upon all of you. My name is Delta. That's DLTA. All figures, no faces. A freelance visual development artist for comics, film, animation, and most importantly, gaming. But as of recently, I've slowly stepped away from working for others and have undertaken the heavy task of working for myself via indie game design. A dream I've had for years and have finally mustered up the strength to pursue through an ongoing project by myself, an independent creative, godlike vision. More details about this project to be disclosed in the future. I, however, would like to start this video off by summarizing my experience with attempts to build a YouTube channel around my favorite hobby, gaming, what I hope to achieve with this channel, as well as a few future plans and ideas. I, like many content creators on this channel, have had the desire of wanting to be a let's play YouTuber, screaming maniacally in front of a camera while playing horror games, laughing and the occasional clowning of game mechanics, characters, and storylines.
Yeah, well, I need a good foreman. You can sit
what?
on the tractor.
This nigga look like the kid from Toy Story.
No cap, bro, no cap.
Nigga talking about, wait,
I want to build a fence.
I don't know. I just don't fuck with the nigga. I don't know what it is.
Or just completely raging at the inability to clear tasks in games.
The moment is gone, they transform into garbage. In the context of technology, those
You
moments
should have
pass by
told.
fish.
Oh my God! Look at the man right.
Disappearing.
Oh! What the freak are you doing? Oh my gosh! I'm stuck, bro. Chill. How?
But like so many new content creators, I nearly fell victim to the pressures of having to play a game I didn't want to for the sake of riding a trend, to score more views on a platform oversaturated with content creators nearly doing the same thing. Then a strange realization dawned upon me. Most viewers rarely watch someone just for the game, but rather for the person in question. You could watch anyone play Five Nights at Freddy, but it may mean more to you when Corey Kenshin plays it because of his own unique personality that he brings to the table.
Go home like the rest of the kids! Oh!
I could honestly go on and on about this topic, but the main point I'm trying to make apparent is that I may eventually go back to making Let's Plays one day, but for now I want to focus on something that may benefit me more in the long run: video essays. The reason why I've chosen video essays as the main format of my channel moving forward is due to the current game we're developing. Constant analysis of other games will help inform my own, and who knows, maybe a AAA or indie studio out there could find these videos and stand to benefit from what I may say. With that being said, I welcome everyone to the first episode of The Issues in Gaming, a series where I speak on problems present in modern day gaming, from the effects on the human condition all the way to the technical aspects of gaming, and how AAA and or indie devs can improve upon and or avoid these issues. The three games we'll be focusing on today will be Capcom's Devil May Cry 5, Insomniac Studios' Spider-Man, with the third and main game in question being Square Enix's Final Fantasy VII Remake and its immersive issue. We'll be discussing the parallels between gameplay and cinematics, characters displaying amazing feats of athleticism, acrobats, and super strength cinematically, contrasted against its gameplay mechanics, and how this can either inform or disrupt the gaming medium's most important element, immersion. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the immersive issue in gaming. But what is immersion, and why is it so important? Immersion is defined as a deep mental involvement in something. Citing HAL Open Science Studies' report on immersion, it derives from a metaphorical definition of being submerged in water, replicating a feeling of being in and around another worldly space, similar to the ethereal feeling of being underwater, the complete separation of air into water, the cut and change of senses during and after the transition. Immersion can occur even with limited sensory input, such as reading an enthralling book or listening to a meaningful piece of music. These smaller classes of immersion can be broken down into 3 types. Sensory immersion. Immersion dealing with the 5 human senses. Hearing a song that brings back memories of a past love. Smelling and tasting a meal that reminds you of mom's cooking growing up. Witnessing a sight that takes your breath away, or a touch that makes the world seem frozen in time. Narrative immersion. More commonly experienced while reading novels, to be absorbed in a story so real, so vivid, that at the very flip of a page, it's as if you're there. Tactical immersion. Common among hands-on activities such as chess, gaming, and various other sports, usually the results of being in a flow state. More on this in a second. The proposed definition, however, for immersion as cited by HAL Open Science Study is a state of deep mental involvement that shifts the user's attention, causing a disassociation from the real world. Often when speaking on immersion, the term flow state is mentioned. Though the two are closely linked, they are 2 separate concepts that can exist without one another. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi was a Hungarian-American psychologist who recognized, named, and popularized the concept of flow, being a mental state of complete focus that produces great enjoyment from the current activity engaged in. The informal term, though, is more widely known as
仲間のために戦う意志面白いゾーンか
being in the zone. Mihai offers another definition of flow in his interview with Wired magazine, where he says, and I quote, "Being completely involved in an activity for its own sake, the ego falls away. Time flies. Every action, movement, and thought follows inevitably from the previous one. Like playing jazz, your whole being is involved, and you're using your skills to the utmost." Similar mental states such as yoga and meditation can be found in Buddhist, Hindu, and Taoist practices. Mihai further adds that flow can be thought of as the holistic sensation that people feel when they act with total involvement. In 1975, Mihai took his research into multiple fields such as painting, dancing, and chess, to name a few, arriving at the conclusion that a flow state requires 2 key things: goals and feedback. The first is that a person needs an optimal challenge, creating the right level of stretch, as Mihai coins it, in a person's skill set. A challenge not too easy to be boring, yet not too difficult to be elusive. The second are short-term goals within the activity, resulting in instant feedback on their progress, creating a constant change of goals during the activity as they're consistently reached. With this, we're able to discern that flow brings a person into immersion, but immersion doesn't always result in the inverse, as seen with listening to music that causes an immersive experience but doesn't place you in a flow state. With this basic understanding of flow and immersion, let's take a look at its importance in modern media like gaming. Gaming has evolved from the old design philosophy of merely gaining points, item collection, beating the boss and achieving a high score, which, as previously described, would solely fall under tactical immersion. Modern day gaming now has full-fledged narratives that utilize all three forms of immersion. Santa Monica Studios' 2018 release of God of War tells you the story of a more down-to-earth Kratos, managing the stresses of being a father while on a quest alongside his son to honor his deceased wife. Narrative immersion. Its cinematics showcase a powerful yet brutal warrior that can combat powerful foes, creatures, and other gods, all accompanied by an excellent score and sound design to enhance the experience. Sensory immersion. Finally, the player is given control of Kratos and is thrown into multiple battles with the very same fearsome beasts and gods promised cinematically. The various moves and abilities at the player's disposal gives credence to the narrative and visuals displayed, creating an engaging experience. Tactical immersion. The result is believability. You can tell me Kratos can beat any beast, titan or god, but I'll only believe it once I'm in control to do the very things promised. You can tell me son Atreus is slowly learning in combat with every fight, but I'll only believe it through skill trees that increase both Kratos and his son's abilities, caused by multiple battles throughout the story that lead to an endgame result of Atreus being able to stand on his own 2 feet alongside his father. Then I'm immersed. When cinematics complement gameplay, it creates a strong sense of immersion. That believability sells the narrative, the visuals, and the gameplay, allowing the player to be immersed. Though God of War has a great immersive experience, it still has moments that break believability. Having Kratos leap great heights into the air only to be devoid of a regular jump in-game interrupts the immersive experience at times, and similar issues are present in Final Fantasy VII Remake. However, before we dive into Square Enix's remake of a cult classic, let's look at 2 games that really excel in an immersive experience. Capcom's Devil May Cry 5 and Insomniac's Spider-Man are currently 2 of my favorite in modern day gaming for a multitude of reasons. But in line with the topic, they by far create an outstanding immersive experience. An easy way to support this is by looking at their opening sequences. In Spider-Man, the game opens in a cluttered and disorganized room full of sketches, notes, gadgets, and of course a myriad of Easter eggs. Peter Parker is then shown waking up to a police report of the first major villain of the game. He hurriedly gets dressed while attempting to multitask in a chaotic room reflective of his own personal life. Once dressed, he's greeted by a notice by his landlord to pay his bills, but as always, he ignores his own problems and puts the affairs of others above his own as he leaps out the window. A brilliant display of narrative immersion. He then web swings, vaults, wall runs, and web zips across a series of buildings in a friendly, no amazing, no spectacular, no, in an ultimate performance of athleticism, acrobats, and experience as he leaps further ahead towards his objective. Yet again, a marvelous demonstration of sensory immersion. The sequence then transitions into gameplay and the player is able to web swing, vault, wall run, and web zip across buildings as previously shown. Tactical immersion. The gameplay is informed via cinematics and story. Believability. Devil May Cry 5 does this rather differently by displaying the 3 immersive classes through 2 introductory sequences. The first begins with an opening dialogue of the Broker, a character known for assigning jobs to one of the main characters, Dante, subtly hinting at the main villain's power by worrying if Dante can even complete the job, while glaring alongside a fear-ridden city at a strange structure seemingly posing a threat to their home. The villain's power is further praised when the player is introduced to the first playable character, Nero, when it is noted that Urizen, the main villain, stole his arm to gain an immense power boost. The audience is now informed of the villain's mystery strength, Nero's handicap, and Redgrave City being in danger. Narrative immersion. The player is then given control of Nero as you make your way through hordes of demons with ease till reaching an unconscious and defeated Dante alongside his 2 partners, Lady and Trish, within the inner sanctum of Urizen's lair. You then attempt to battle him, but the longer the fight continues, the more you realize that you can't win. This further supports Nero's weakened state due to his handicap, as the fight concludes with Urizen easily defeating Nero in battle, whether the player puts up a good fight or not. Tactical immersion. Dante then awakes to save Nero, ordering V, the mysterious character, to leave and take the newbie demon hunter to safety, to which V adds that Nero should think of ways to get stronger in a now crumbling battlefield, as Dante attempts to hold off Urizen while they escape. Sensory immersion. A second dose of immersion then takes place as Nero and his partner Nico make their way into the city. Soldiers are seen being killed by demons as they attempt to defend Redgrave City against the hordes of monsters released via Urizen's plan, till a lone soldier is left to fight off his impending doom. He's then saved by Nico and Nero, who mocks the soldier as Nero walks towards the demon horde nonchalant, demonstrating his fearlessness and assurance in his own abilities as a demon hunter. Narrative immersion. A seemingly confident Nero then introduces the player to his new gameplay mechanic that will form a large part of combat in-game, the Devil Breaker. Nero then plows through hordes of demons as he snatches and cuts his way through various demons stylishly, using his sword, gun, and of course, Devil Breaker. Sensory immersion. The player is then given control to test out the new ability across numerous Devil Breakers, complementing the visuals with the gameplay. The resulting believability of Nero's increased power, especially with the newly created Devil Breakers he earns along the way while upgrading various abilities, adds credence to the narrative of him gaining more power before facing Urizen again. Tactical immersion. The strong sense of believability is a recurring element within the story, most especially with Dante, as he gives short demonstrations to the player for every new weapon he acquires before allowing the player control. Well, maybe not every weapon. Believability is evident in Spider-Man and Devil May Cry 5 throughout both campaigns, having cinematics roughly juxtapose gameplay. Of course, not every action characters do in cinematics are capable in gameplay, but the large majority of abilities and storytelling that take place in-game allow for seamless immersion. So, what's the issue with Final Fantasy VII Remake? Before I dig into the core of this, like Shinra, I want to make it clear that I really did enjoy this game, especially as a fan of the Final Fantasy series. I loved a lot of the cinematics, the newer missions, newer characters added, as well as a more detailed Midgar to really push what the heroes were fighting for. Really made this game an impressive remake, even with the issues it had. The action format is also a much needed change from the turn-based style Final Fantasy games are known for, and that point alone honestly needs its own video. But let's return to this game's immersive issue. The opening sequence for this one does things a little bit differently, and in my opinion, a bit better than the other two games mentioned before. The game opens with an establishing shot of the world through a bird's eye view, and we move closer to the city the game takes place in, Midgar. After a small title sequence, we draw closer towards Midgar as we zoom into a train boarded atop by the main protagonist, Cloud. Soldiers are then seen scanning the train before more of the heroes reveal themselves to take out the first two guards. The next main character, Barrett, then steps out and calls for Cloud, ordering him to take out the enemies ahead. We begin with sensory immersion. We transition into gameplay and the player gets to defeat guards one after another as the other characters consistently praise Cloud's abilities the further you move into the mission. Tactical immersion with subtle drops of narrative immersion. The longer you proceed, Barrett and the others give context to the mission, revealing that they are attempting to bomb a power reactor essential to powering the city due to the ecological risks the reactor holds towards the planet. Cloud is revealed to be a mercenary with an abundance of experience in combat due to being part of an advanced military force known as Soldier, as noted by Barrett, Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge. This most likely is why the player is thrust into combat without much sensory exposition, to reinforce the idea of an experienced soldier that has done similar work in the past, yet foreshadows a narrative exposition that slowly unveils itself later on in the game. We're also treated to a clear tension between Cloud and Barrett the further along the bombing mission gets, showing Barrett's distrust in anyone who once worked for Shinra, the power company manufacturing the reactors, as well as Cloud's previous employer. More narrative immersion. However, by the end of the bombing mission, immersion slowly begins to crumble, specifically when the cast begins escaping the now collapsing reactor.
Okay, that was pretty cool. Alright, come on.
Cloud and Tifa are two characters in part 1 who demonstrate the most athletic and acrobatic abilities, and although it translates at an efficient level in gameplay, I say efficient, not perfect, because air combat needs to be seriously reworked, but poorly and traversal outside of combat. Many of the cutscenes depict the most athletic characters performing great feats of acrobatic abilities, sometimes even with certain attacks in combat. Yet, characters are constrained to only move in spaces that fail to demonstrate their wider range of movement. The biggest cause for this isn't necessarily things like the lack of a jump button, but more due to a crutch Square Enix created for itself in an attempt to appease a veteran fan base. The cause is level design. Square's approach to level design in this game is best put as archaic. Having characters clear large gaps from collapsing bridges, impossible jumps, and near flight-like abilities, only to be bamboozled by a 5-foot gap because the developers expect you to find another way around, flip switches, and move through sequences of lifts and stairs, something that should have been remade. Now I'm aware that the Yuffie DLC addresses a few of the issues presented, but there are more traversal options from other games that Square has either developed and or published, which will be looked at as we figure out how Square can improve the classic title for part 2 moving on. From what the Yuffie DLC has shown, Square Enix is definitely aware of its traversal issues and has done substantial changes in patching those wounds through changing up their approach at level design. Yuffie's traversal of the environment from wall climbing to wall running to her throwing a shuriken to hard to reach areas is reflective of her ninja traits, which makes exploration a lot more fun, granting the player believability of playing as a ninja inspired character. This further translates into gameplay with her attacks as well as team attacks with her support Sonnen. The issue with part 1 seemed to be the way characters interact with the environment and the lack of emphasis on it. I'd like to see level design that gives more narrative immersion to who the characters are. I think of the recent Guardians of the Galaxy game that surprised many gamers worldwide. Though Star-Lord was the only playable character, team attacks helped create a powerful dynamic between Star-Lord and his team, but this wasn't only limited to the battle. The player could command the other Guardians to help clear pathways, help Star-Lord up high platforms and cross gaps. That told a story of its own through basic traversal of the terrain. In part 1, we play as Barrett for a brief period where we get to blast through large blockades of rubble and debris outside of combat, yet carried over into other parts of exploration. This happens again with Red 13, where he functions as a supporting character that crosses areas the others can't, but again, this is done minimally. A missed opportunity on Square Enix's part. In the case of combat, especially air combat, Square needs to allow for some characters to function better mid-air while others excel on the ground, and or at the very least, add a jump button to allow more control in battling airborne foes. Again, these aren't things that ruin the overall experience of the game, but are definitely issues that should be addressed, and based on the Yuffie DLC as well as games published by Square like Guardians of the Galaxy, Square is already on the right track to fixing a lot of these issues, and I definitely can't wait for the future of Final Fantasy VII, as well as the series as a whole. Immersion in gaming builds attachment to not only the story but characters. Gone are the days of high-budget explosive cutscenes that cut into stiff gameplay. Modern gaming has demonstrated that cutscenes are not just mere entertainment, but tools that should inform the player of mechanics present in-game. This leads to a powerful phenomena where the gameplay actively tells the story more than cutscenes. Most writers understand this as the ability to show, not tell. If you agree or don't, please let me know. I'd love to hear all your views in the comments below. Active discussion on topics like this are important, especially with the growing monopolization of the gaming industry. And with that, may God bless you, peace be upon you all. Until next time.